Commander Adrian Voss stood in the middle of the dimly lit room, bathed in eerie greenish light. A faint metallic scent lingered in the air, as if even the atmosphere here was foreign to human lungs. The walls had a smooth, organic texture, giving the unsettling impression that the building itself was a living organism. Opposite him, the Confederation's envoy, Lady Zyra, sat in all her splendor. Her emerald green skin shimmered almost fluidly under the light. Her hair cascaded over her shoulders in delicate braids, and her eyes. Those piercing eyes scrutinized Adrian with quiet intensity. Humans. Are they truly as fascinating as they are said to be, Commander Voss? Zyra asked, a slight smirk playing on her lips. Her voice was smooth, almost hypnotic. Adrian merely smiled. You're here to find that out, aren't you? Zyra leaned back in her chair. The Jar Confederation is built on strength. You've come to talk, but let me tell you a simple truth. Words have never been sharper than the sword in this galaxy. In that moment, Adrian understood. This was not a diplomatic negotiation. It was a test of power. The Confederation had not come merely to observe humanity. They had come to challenge them. But there was something Zyra did not yet realize. Humans had mastered the art of winning wars without ever drawing a blade. Adrian Voss ignored Zyra's condescending gaze and took his seat. The alien envoy studied him with a confident smile. The Confederation valued raw strength and warrior prowess above all else. To them, humans were mere entertainment, an amusement to be tested. But Adrian was a soldier, and wars were not won only on the battlefield. Words have never been sharper than the sword in this galaxy, Zyra had said. Adrian tilted his head slightly, his smile unwavering. You think so? He said in a calm voice. Zyra's brows furrowed ever so slightly. She was no diplomat. She was a representative of a race that ruled the galaxy through intimidation, manipulation, and brute force. And she didn't like how relaxed this human seemed. Tell me, Commander Voss, what do you and your people offer us? Her voice was measured. We are giving you the opportunity to join the greatest alliance in the galaxy. Submit, and we may find a place for you. If you do not, she left the sentence and finished. It wasn't a direct threat, but the meaning was clear. Adrian smiled inwardly. They had no idea that crude threats meant little to humans. I propose an agreement, Lady Zyra, Adrian said, leaning back in his chair. But first, let me tell you a story. Zyra narrowed her eyes but remained silent, listening. Thousands of years ago, on our world, there was an empire called Rome. It was powerful, ruthless. It grew by war and conquest. They believed no enemy could stand against them until they met someone weaker, yet far more cunning. Zyra tilted her head. And what happened? Adrian's smile deepened. Those who sought to conquer Rome learned to speak its language. They learned its laws, used its trade routes. Then, one day, Rome woke up to find that the very barbarians they had once dismissed had become indistinguishable from them, except they were now the ones in control. Rome did not fall by the sword, Lady Zyra. It was undone by its own system. The air in the room shifted. The smirk on Zyra's face faded. What are you implying? Adrian leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. You are one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy, aren't you? Adrian's voice was calm, measured. You want us to submit, to follow your rules. But what happens if we start adapting to your system? What if, over time, we learn your laws, your trade routes, your balance of power? What if we take sides in your internal conflicts and choose your enemies for you? While you believe the Confederation has conquered us, what if, in reality, we become the masters of the Confederation? Zyra stared at him without blinking. Adrian leaned back with a slight smile. If you let us into your world, one day, you might wake up to find that it has become ours. A brief silence filled the room. The arrogance in Zyra's eyes had faded. Adrian knew that the Confederation operated solely on the principles of strength and warfare. But that was also their greatest weakness. They assumed their rules applied to everyone. But humans adapted. They blended in. And then, they became the ones in control. Zyra took a deep breath and lowered her head slightly, for the first time appearing uncertain. I will have to consider this, she said slowly. Adrian gave a slight nod. Of course, Lady Zyra. But don't take too long. After all, time is something we've learned to use very well. And in that moment, diplomacy once again proved to be sharper than the sword. Zyra weighed Adrian Voss's words carefully. She saw his proposition as a cunning strategy, but he underestimated the Confederation's intelligence. Humans might be clever, but the Confederation had ruled the galaxy for tens of thousands of years. Did he truly believe a young and inexperienced civilization could outmaneuver them? You told an interesting story, Commander, Zyra said with a faint smile. The fall of Rome. The notion that humans assimilate and eventually become the masters. I find it rather clever. Adrian tilted his head slightly, his expression confident. It's just a theory, Lady Zyra. But history has proven it time and time again. Internally, Zyra smiled. This man was exactly the kind of human the Confederation had expected. At that moment, a discreet message flashed on her wrist-mounted holodevice. The plan was proceeding as intended. Following the diplomatic meeting, Adrian was invited to an honor banquet at the heart of the Confederation. It was a traditional ceremony for new candidate species, meant to show them respect, but in truth, it was a test. Adrian accepted the invitation, but his instincts told him something was off. Zyra and several high-ranking council members escorted him to the Golden Dome, a historic site where leaders of potential new allies were hosted. Hundreds of representatives from various species watched Adrian as he entered. Seated at the grand banquet table, one of the Confederation's senior leaders, Lord Kelvin, spoke in a deep, resonant voice. Humans think of themselves as great strategists. His words echoed through the hall. Adrian calmly swirled the drink in his glass. We simply know how to survive, Lord Kelvin. But survival is not the same as victory, Kelvin said with a smirk. Did you truly believe you could infiltrate our system and control it from within? That we would allow you to move freely without anticipating your every step? Zyra interjected. You thought you would conquer us, didn't you, Commander? But in reality, we have already conquered you. The atmosphere in the hall shifted. Adrian realized the Confederation's true plan. Humans had believed they could integrate into the Confederation and manipulate it from within. But the Confederation had already set up a system to manipulate them instead. Over time, human diplomats would become accustomed to the Confederation's governance style. They would be drawn deeper into galactic politics, slowly abandoning their own identity until they were fully assimilated into the Confederation's culture. The real strategy was not to subjugate humanity but to make humanity willingly become part of the Confederation, erasing its independence entirely. Adrian now understood the Confederation was playing its own game with words, but there was one flaw in their plan. Adrian chuckled softly. The hall fell silent. Zyra's eyes narrowed. What amuses you, Commander? Adrian lifted his gaze, his smile growing. You think you've trapped us, all, Lady Zyra. That is where you made your mistake. The Confederation leaders stared at him, confused. Why was this man still so calm? You believe that by bringing us into the Confederation, we will lose our identity, Adrian said. But the truth is, we have been playing this game far longer than you. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Zyra's face. What do you mean? Adrian raised his hand slightly. At that moment, the lights in the council chamber flickered. Zyra's holodevice suddenly received an emergency message. Urgent report from the Human Diplomatic Council. 7 member states of the Jar Confederation have started making separate agreements with humans. Risk of council fracture. Zyra's eyes widened. How is this possible? Adrian stood up, placing his hands on the table. You thought you were controlling us, but we've already infiltrated the very depths of your Confederation. Because you believed power was only about brute force, but real power lies in ideas. Change the way people think, and empires crumble just like Rome. Zyra's breath hitched. Adrian could see the realization dawn on her. She was witnessing one of the greatest strategic manipulations in galactic history. Humans never conquered through war, and now the Confederation was about to learn what it meant to let the enemy walk through the gates. A shadow fell across Zyra's face. Adrian could see what she was feeling: shock, fear, and admiration. Because the Confederation had endured countless rebellions, civil wars, and diplomatic intrigues throughout its history, but never had they encountered such a subtle, long-term maneuver. Adrian smiled internally. While you tried to assimilate us, we took over you. The future of the Confederation is now in our hands. Then, suddenly, Zyra smiled. Adrian's instincts flared to full alert. That reaction was wrong. Very wrong. Zyra leaned back slightly in her chair, eyes narrowing. You are truly brilliant, Commander, but I wonder, did you really think we didn't anticipate this move? Adrian's fingers twitched involuntarily. What did she mean? Zyra slowly turned the screen on her wrist holodevice, revealing something Adrian wasn't expecting. The secret agreements between humanity and the 7 member states had been exposed. Covert meetings between human diplomats and certain Confederation factions had been recorded. The Confederation's intelligence division had been tracking human diplomats all along. They had known about the infiltration attempt from the beginning. Adrian's blood ran cold. This was a trap. There was a victorious glint in Zyra's eyes. You thought you could infiltrate us, but in truth, we saw your plan long ago and allowed you inside. Adrian's mind raced. Was this possible? Human intelligence agencies had worked meticulously to weaken the Confederation from within. But now, he realized their efforts had been a carefully laid bait. Zyra tapped her fingers against the table. You believed you could play games with us, but in reality, our plan was to let you believe you could. She smirked. And now, we have proof. Adrian controlled his breathing, keeping his expression neutral. And what will you do? Threaten humanity with war? Zyra laughed. Oh no. Wiping out humanity would take too much energy and resources. Instead, she raised her hand, activating a massive holographic screen in the center of the chamber. Across the galactic broadcast networks, an emergency report was being aired. The Jar Confederation presents undeniable evidence that humanity has endangered galactic peace. Secret negotiations between human diplomats and Confederation factions have been confirmed. Adrian felt the weight of the world crashing down. The Confederation was using this as an opportunity to paint humanity as a threat to galactic stability. Zyra gave him a triumphant smile. Who will trust humanity now, Commander? Who will want to form alliances with you? Adrian's mind worked at a furious pace. If the Confederation succeeded in isolating humanity, they would have no allies. Diplomatic channels would shut down, trade routes would be restricted, and humanity would be cut off from the galactic stage. This was how you crushed a species without ever firing a single shot. And the Confederation had played their hand masterfully. Adrian took a deep breath. There was no room for defeat now. Silence hung between them. Zyra had relaxed, believing Adrian was about to concede. But then, Adrian slowly lifted his head, a small smile forming on his lips. Interesting move, he said calmly, but do you know what truly terrifies the galaxy? Zyra's eyes narrowed. What? Adrian leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. Things that cannot be controlled. Then, he lightly tapped the small device on his wrist. The holographic screen before Zyra suddenly changed. Her expression shifted from confidence to shock and panic. Because now, new broadcasts were appearing. And the Confederation's secret plans were being exposed to the entire galaxy. One by one, damning revelations unfolded. The Confederation had planned to lure humanity in and destroy them diplomatically. Some of the member states had actually wanted to work with humans, but had been forcibly suppressed. Zyra and the Confederation's leadership had been manipulating the narrative to paint humans as a false threat to the galaxy. Zyra's face was pale with disbelief. This is impossible. We controlled everything. Adrian leaned back slowly. Wrong. We controlled everything. And we let you think otherwise. Zyra's hand trembled. This had been humanity's true trap. The Confederation had set a trap to destroy humanity's credibility, but humanity had already set their own counter-trap long before. The Confederation was beginning to fracture. Some factions were outraged at the deception, threatening to leave the alliance entirely. The seeds of a civil war had just been sown. Adrian rose to his feet and gave Zyra one last look. The greatest empire in the galaxy may soon fall, all because of its own arrogance. Zyra clenched her jaw. This isn't over, Adrian Voss. Adrian chuckled. No, it's not. But this battle, we've won. Diplomacy had once again proven sharper than the sword. And humanity had just taken one step closer to conquering the galaxy without ever firing a shot. Zyra's face was expressionless, but inside, her fury burned like fire in her chest. She watched Adrian Voss's smug grin. This human thought he had won. He believed they had infiltrated the Confederation and taken control of everything. But Zyra had never been one to accept defeat. Losers played by the rules of the game. Zyra, however, was determined to change the rules. As Adrian leaned back in his chair, looking relieved, a cunning plan took shape in her mind. She would let the Confederation appear as if it was losing. No matter how well humans played their game, Zyra had discovered their greatest weakness. Humans were impatient. They thought themselves masters of time, but to species like Zyra's, who had lived for millennia, time was a weapon. As Adrian met her gaze, Zyra gave him a warm smile, a gesture of surrender. It seems you have defeated us, Commander Voss. Adrian gave a slight nod. I'm glad you see the truth, Lady Zyra. Zyra laughed inwardly. Truth, poor human. You are only just beginning to see reality. That night, deep within one of the Confederation's most secret chambers, Zyra gathered her private council. Humans think they have won, she said, her voice cold as a blade. But we will show them what true victory looks like, one of the council members grumbled. But their information has already spread across the galaxy. They have started dividing us from within. Zyra narrowed her eyes. Exactly, and that is what we will turn to our advantage. As she laid out her plan, the room fell silent. Because what she proposed was something humans would never expect. What was humanity's greatest strength? Their intelligence, their ability to adapt, their strategic thinking. But what was their greatest weakness? Paranoia. Throughout their history, humans had torn themselves apart more than any external enemy ever could. Their greatest empires had not fallen to invaders, but to internal corruption, distrust, and division. Rome had not fallen to barbarians alone, it had rotted from within. During the Cold War, they had nearly brought about their own destruction not because of war, but because they didn't trust each other. Whenever they had gained power, they had always found ways to turn that power against themselves. This was the key to their downfall, and Zyra's plan was built upon it. The next day, the Confederation suddenly withdrew. Human diplomats were confused. Zyra and the other leaders publicly declared that they were ready to work with humanity for the stability of the galaxy. But this move was not meant to unite humanity. It was meant to divide them. Because at the same time, the Confederation secretly sent different messages to different factions within humanity. To Earth's governments, we have heard that the Mars colony is negotiating a better deal for themselves behind your back. To Mars, Earth's government intends to keep control over the Galactic Alliance. They will discard you when the time comes. To the lunar base, both Earth and Mars see you as nothing more than a pawn. But we could support your independence. To the human military leaders, your diplomats are betraying you. Who do you think will truly hold power in this new order? Just as Adrian believed humanity was rising on the galactic stage, cracks began to form within their own ranks. They had won without a war. But now, without realizing it, they had begun a war among themselves. Instead of forging a strong alliance, they were creating unstable factions. Zyra simply watched it unfold, smiling to herself. Humans unite when given an enemy, she thought. But when we give them an enemy within their own ranks, that is when the real war begins. Adrian Voss stared at the first reports of unrest among human colonies. His expression was one of pure shock. This isn't possible. They had won through diplomacy. Yet now, his own people no longer trusted each other. Instead of standing united against the Confederation, they had turned against themselves. There was no need for an external war anymore. Because Zyra knew the greatest victory was not in winning the battle but in making your enemy collapse from within. And that was exactly what the Confederation was doing to humanity. Adrian Voss stared at the holographic screens on his desk. The fractures within human colonies were deepening. The Martian government had declared that Earth was belittling them and that they should forge their own independent diplomatic agreements. Earth's politicians, despite being aware of the Confederation's manipulations, no longer trusted each other. The lunar colonies, caught between the two factions, had begun demanding independence, claiming that the best path for humanity was self-determination. It was a nightmare. Zyra was winning. She and the Confederation had successfully divided humanity without a single battle. And then, the unexpected happened. Across every system, all communication networks simultaneously received the same signal. An unknown source had sent a message to both humanity and the Confederation. The message was simple: have you had enough fun? A cold chill ran down Adrian's spine. This was not a human message. In her council chamber, Zyra stared at the screen, a deep unease settling within her. The Confederation had not sent this message. Then who did? Mere minutes after the message was received, abnormal signals began appearing across the galaxy. Mars's orbital satellites malfunctioned all at once. Earth's most advanced intelligence systems began failing unexpectedly. The Confederation's Central Intelligence Network came under an unknown cyber attack. Nowhere was safe. And then, unknown ships began appearing across the galaxy, silent, patient, watching. They had been observing for a long time. And now, they had decided to intervene. Adrian watched the footage from the Martian human base. A colossal structure, the size of a planet, emerged from the shadow of one of Jupiter's moons. This was not a ship. This was a fortress. And no one, neither humans nor the Confederation, had ever known of its existence. Zyra saw the panic in her council's faces. "This is impossible," one of the council members shouted. "This species, these ships, they are just a myth." Zyra held her breath. She did not need an explanation, because she already knew. The true rulers of this galaxy had returned. Long ago, there had been an empire erased from history. They did not wage war. They did not rule. They only watched. And one day, they had vanished without a trace. But now, they were back. They were the judges. And they had grown tired of humanity's and the Confederation's games. A message echoed from within the massive structure. The voice was neither human nor Confederation. It was as if all languages had been fused into one. "You have overstepped your bounds. The game is over." And then, in mere seconds, the largest trade route between Mars and Earth was annihilated by an unknown energy wave. No explanation, no negotiation. Just erasure. Adrian's eyes widened in horror. "My God, that was a warning." Zyra whispered, This is impossible." They were gone, but no. They had never left. They had been waiting. And now, as humanity and the Confederation destabilized the galaxy, they had decided to return. Humanity and the Confederation now had to make a choice. Unite and find a way to defend against the judges. Or continue their internal conflicts and be wiped out entirely. Adrian and Zyra had started as enemies. But now, they faced the same unknown threat. The true rulers of the galaxy had returned, and their patience was running out. Adrian Voss listened to the judge's message with a calm expression. "You have overstepped your bounds. The game is over." Confederation officials exchanged horrified glances. Even Zyra was silent, but Adrian was neither afraid nor ready to submit. He activated the holographic communication system and sent a single message to all human colonies: Earth, Mars, the Moon, and every deep space outpost. Humanity has never bowed to anyone in history. Today will be no different. A few seconds of silence followed. Zyra and the Confederation leaders began to think Adrian had lost his mind, challenged the judges. That was suicide, but Adrian continued. "If diplomacy fails, then the solution is war." Zyra's eyes widened. "Are you insane? These beings possess technology beyond our understanding. They could erase entire planets in seconds." Adrian turned to her with an unwavering gaze. "So can we." Humanity had always thrived on war. Rome had crushed its enemies with both sword and diplomacy. The Mongols had brought empires to their knees through sheer terror. Two world wars had brought humanity to the brink of annihilation, but every time, humans rose again. And now, the oldest and most powerful beings in the galaxy sought to rule them. The answer was simple: never. Earth's largest space stations were mobilized. Mars activated its most advanced warships. Lunar underground factories prepared human-engineered superweapons, but most importantly, humanity's greatest strength was its ability to replicate and turn an enemy's weapons against them. The Judge's mysterious energy wave was already being analyzed by human scientists. And at Adrian's command, humanity's first superweapon was activated, codenamed Prometheus. Humanity's response was not just a declaration of war, it was a challenge. For the first time, the Judges had encountered a species that refused to kneel. Once, even the Confederation had bowed before them. Yet now, for the first time in recorded history, their authority had been denied. At that moment, the massive Judges station, hidden in Jupiter's shadow, began radiating a surge of immense energy. This was an annihilation signal. But at that precise moment, Prometheus was activated. Zyra watched in sheer horror. "What have you done? You provoked them." Adrian remained composed. "If they intend to enslave us, then we will at least die fighting." Just then, the Judge's massive fortress trembled. For the first time in galactic history, the Judge's defenses had been breached. Prometheus had become the first weapon ever to successfully damage the Judges. And Adrian simply muttered one thing: "First blood is ours." The galaxy trembled. The Judges and humanity had engaged in the greatest war the universe had ever witnessed. The Judges were the ancient masters of existence. No species had ever dared to challenge them. Their technology was beyond even the grasp of time itself, but humans, they were the most dangerous species to ever fight for survival. And now, the war that would determine the fate of the galaxy had begun. The Judges' colossal fleets filled the skies, their ships bending even the fabric of light itself. Human warships responded with hyperplasma cannons fired from Mars and lunar bases. In the first minutes of battle, 60% of Earth's largest defense satellites were destroyed. But humanity never retreated. A massive Judge warship was shot down in Jupiter's orbit. The Prometheus 2 bombs, deployed from underground lunar bases, pierced the Judge's defenses. The Martian fleet became the first force to ever break through a Judge's energy shields, but the losses were devastating. Earth was under relentless bombardment, cities were burning. The Judge's pure energy weapons scorched entire planetary surfaces. The war was not fair, humanity was losing, but at that moment, Adrian Voss remembered the final option. It was time to reveal humanity's greatest secret. Deep in space, humanity had a weapon never meant to be used. Ragnarok, a weapon capable of erasing entire planets. But its effects were unknown. It had never been tested. It was a ethereal weapon so destructive that even human governments had feared using it, but now they had no other choice. "Prepare Ragnarok." When Commander Adrian Voss gave the order, the room fell silent. The Martian scientists exchanged worried glances. "But we don't know its effects. It could tear apart the entire galaxy." Adrian's eyes were cold. "Either we use it now, or we cease to exist." A few moments of hesitation, then Ragnarok activation sequence initiated. And humanity's ultimate weapon was fired. Like the death of a star, space itself tore open. The Judges' warships trembled. They had never witnessed such an energy explosion before. The impact of Ragnarok annihilated the Judges' fleet in the war zone. But the most terrifying part, the Judges' primary dimensional stations began to collapse. And for the first time in history, the Judges were forced to flee. They left behind a single message: "You may drive us away, but we will return." And so, the Judges retreated. But this was not a victory. Because even humanity did not understand what they had just done. Ragnarok was not just a weapon. It had unleashed a force capable of altering the very fabric of the universe itself. The Judges were not defeated, they were simply waiting. But now, they saw humans as their true enemies, and humanity. They had no idea what the consequences of their own weapon would be. After Ragnarok's detonation, space-time anomalies began spreading across the galaxy. A new war was coming. But one thing was now certain: humanity had proven that they would never bow. And the war was far from over. This was only the beginning.